Welcome back to the Motivating Force podcast. I am host Wayne. Joining me as always, we have Justin. Now, if you're somebody who likes to think of themselves as a warrior, you're a deadly guy, you're big, you're this tough guy, or tough female, we're going to be talking about samurais today. So this video is mainly for you guys. So warriors, some might argue the deadliest warriors that ever fought in history. But the secret that we're going to be talking about isn't on how to be deadly or how to become like the samurai and how they would kill and they were just fearless and all this. But it was the balance between the peace and the war within themselves. So if you're somebody who's been living under a rock, or, just tell me who you are, because if you don't know who a samurai is or what they are, let me know. So a brief summary of what the samurais were. In ancient, not really ancient, but long ago in Japan, from 1185 to 1868, the samurai, members of powerful military caste in feudal Japan, began as provincial warriors before rising to power in the 12th century with the beginning of the country's first military dictatorship. Now, that's all we're going to talk about on what they were, because now we're going to start talking about their code of conduct that they uphold, and these, some might say, like guidelines that everybody, even you, can implement in your lives and start taking some of these guidelines and traits into your life and become like the samurai, become better at mastering that inner peace with the inner war or the outside war, whatever the case may be. You can still be this deadly warrior, if you want to think of yourself that way, but manage to balance out, war and peace at the same time.
Well, I think this is going to be good too for people who struggle with anxiety and struggle with stress and maybe actually see themselves as a little inferior to others or a little weaker.
Yeah.
And of course, that's not saying down to anybody, but maybe that's how you feel personally. And I think that this will help you out too, because in the same way that it's going to help bring things down a scale, it can actually help boost your confidence too, going through and practicing these codes that these samurais followed.
Well, that's a true statement, because it's also very empowering when you start applying these things, because then you're going to start noticing what fools other people make themselves out to be when you set these codes for yourself and if you uphold them. But let's talk about those codes, and the code of conduct that they uphold is the Bushido. Now, again, we might be touching back on the way of the samurai later on, further episodes, but the brief summary of this way of the warrior kind of conduct that they had, it's an 8-code code of conduct, and it was a strict ethical code influenced by Confucianism, which I believe might be in a couple weeks that we'll talk about Confucius, that stressed loyalty to one's master, respect for one's superior, ethical behavior in all aspects of life, and complete self-discipline. So that goes to show, when you are this brute, when you are this warrior type person, having self-discipline is going to help ground you a lot of times. So then you're not just flailing around acting like the god of war and you're just tearing everything down in your path. You need to have some kind of grounded, structured life to keep going and not destroy everything in your path. Now, if talking about samurais, if these samurai were to break one of these rules, then the honor would have to be regained after time. But there are several instances where if they've broken some of these codes, one might have to perform a type of ritual suicide known as seppuku in order to regain their honor in death. And I believe it's like 13 Ronin or 37 Ronin with Keanu Reeves. Great movie, but they ended up all having to do that. So then, kind of realistic
it's a good
example.
Adaptation.
It's like an example that people can see what that seppuku was like, because I'm sure since we don't have samurais now, you don't see that. What is a ritual suicide?
Well, I mean, you could imagine how serious that these codes were taken.
Yeah.
And setting up those boundaries, setting up those rules for your life makes such a big impact that if you break some of the most hardest of rules, the only way you're going to gain your respect back is essentially to kill yourself.
Yeah.
That kind of says a lot about the mentality and the ideas behind this line of ethical belief.
Yeah, because remember back in that time, in the 12th century, Japan was a bunch of little like towns and provinces. Like it says they started as provincial warriors. So these were people that kind of just had to protect their land. They were essentially like their land's bodyguard. So then as time went on and they grew higher and higher ranks in politics and bigger kingdoms and stuff, there was more of like that military aspect. So it's like if our military were to lead by example, it would be by that way of the warrior, that 8 code conduct, the Bushido. So if we see the people protecting us not upholding that bar that they're setting for themselves, then how's that going to make us look at them?
Right.
So that's why it's such a grave punishment when you break one of them. So to start off, the first rule or conduct code is rectitude and justice. A well-known samurai defines it in this way: rectitude is one's power to decide upon a course of conduct in accordance with reason, without wavering, to die when to die is right, to strike when to strike is right. And then another samurai speaks in the following terms: rectitude is the bone that gives firmness and stature. Without bones, the head cannot rest on top of the spine, nor hands move, nor feet stand. So without rectitude, neither talent nor learning can make the human frame into samurai. So whatever you do, it needs to be justified by some kind of good reasoning. There needs to be, it can't be with like a malicious intent. Whatever you do needs to be righteous in nature.
I mean, that right off the rip is already powerful enough as it is, and I think that can change a lot of people's perspectives. But yeah, it's good to see that these 8 codes are set up in a specific order for a reason. And starting off at the top with being able to rectify things, being righteous, it needs to be in your bones. It's your foundation. I like that.
Yeah. And then the second one would be courage. Bushido distinguishes between bravery and courage. Courage is worthy of being counted among virtues only if it's exercised in the cause of righteousness and rectitude. Now, it just said at the beginning, there's a difference between being brave and being courageous. You can be brave and kill a bunch of people. You can be Stalin. You can be Hitler. Don't do that. But when you're courageous, the reasoning behind the things, like I said before, with the rectitude and justice, you have that righteous intent. You're protecting something. You're fighting for what is right. Or like I mentioned last week with how to be a great leader, different traits that you need to have. And one of those were to be courageous. Step out for your team. Put yourself on the line for them. Or promote them. Give them praise. Because it's not just you.
I mean, that is a good distinction there, because that's exactly what I mentioned to you when we were first going over these notes. I was like, well, with being courageous, though, I mean, you could be courageous for the wrong reasons. So you're able to point out the difference between bravery and being courageous. So there's definitely a distinguishing factor to that, where you just got to go off of the first thing, right? With rectification. And it's coming out from the inside out, making sure that you're doing things with all the right intentions.
It's not like you are the soldier that's going out everywhere and you're fighting for what is right, but just the little things that you do in your day-to-day. Like I'm saying, this whole code can be in everybody's life. Any civilian, any just normal person, average person can implement all of these different things on any aspect of their life. The little things that you do at your house, the little things that you do at work, you can apply being courageous, being like having the justice and rectitude in what you're doing, making sure that every little thing is for the right reason. If you're at work and you see your boss doing something bad, like step up, tell them like, listen, you shouldn't be doing that. You might lose your job, but at least you'll feel better knowing that you're stepping up for what's right.
Yeah.
Now the third point, benevolence and mercy. A man invested with the power to command and the power to kill was expected to demonstrate equally extraordinary powers of benevolence and mercy. Both Confucius, which we're going to talk about, and Mencius often said the highest requirement of a ruler of men is benevolence. So having the mercy to not just slaughter an entire race of people, having the mercy to not just throw everybody under the bus. You need to be able to have some sort of baseline to protect those under you.
Yeah, I mean, I like the build up so far, always believing in what's right, always being able to stand up for what's right. And when people are doing things wrong, having the mercy and ability to allow them to correct themselves.
Correct.
It's good so far. I see how this applies to everybody.
Yeah.
Not just a soldier.
It's been around for since the 12th century. So it's made its impact for a good reason. Politeness is the next code, and courtesy and good manners have been noticed by every foreign tourist as distinctive Japanese traits. I'm sure you've seen everybody how they're so like they bow to you when they see you, when they say thank you. They're all so polite. They have good table manners. Like that all stems from this code that started in their culture years and years and years ago. But politeness should be the expression of a benevolent regard for the feelings of others. It's a poor virtue if it's motivated only by fear of offending good taste. In its highest form, politeness approaches love. So don't fake it. You have to really just live politely. You can't just be doing it because you think it's going to be, you can't go to your significant other's house and try to impress their parents because you want a good impact on them, but then turn around and you beat your wife or you beat your kids. That's faking it to the extreme where it's like you're only being polite in certain scenarios just so then other people won't think about you in a certain way. And that's when it becomes that poor virtue that I just mentioned. But when you live that polite code of conduct and you really just have that inner trait that you set for yourself, that bar is going to be held up really high when you're living it your entire life.
See, with politeness, I like that a lot because with that example you give, of course that's being extreme, but it's very true. When you're being polite for the sake of being polite, and when you're being polite because that's how you are, it is a noticeable difference. People see that right away. And granted, in like fleeting moments, you get away with it. Nobody's really paying attention. But if you do have different intentions, that's always going to bleed through. People are going to see that really fast. So I like that. And that's definitely a challenge for a lot of people, because to start off with fixing a lot of like the being so like crass or something like that, you do kind of have to start with almost like that sense of being fake polite, because first you don't even know what it really is like. So you need to like test those waters and be like, okay, so this is what it is to have patience with,
a stranger,
with a stranger,
angry or whatever.
Yeah. And then to actually get into that mindset, you are going to have a little bit of a struggle there, where you might have to fake it just that little bit, as long as you have that right intention of falling into it fully.
But then, like, I'm trying to give the real world examples, and like I mentioned at the beginning, the people that think that they are this super tough guy or super tough woman, they're going to be very intimidating to a lot of people. So having the knowledge ahead of time that, hey, you are intimidating, don't try to like abuse that. But when people do kind of reach out to you or try to talk to you, it's going to make you look 10 times better when you are approachable, when they can come to you and you are polite back to them. That's just going to make you look even better. So why try to just base it off of fear and make everybody just run away and not interact with you? Because then sooner or later, you're going to be very lonely.
Yeah.
And then talking about real world examples, the next one is honesty and sincerity. So true samurai disdained money, believing that men must grudge money, for riches hinder wisdom. Thus, children of high-ranking samurai were raised to believe that talking about money showed poor taste, and that ignorance of the value of different coins showed a good upbringing. So, like I mentioned, real-world example, when you're somebody that's just flaunting all the cash you got, or you're faking that you're this wealthy guy, but you live in a shack, like you're putting on this mask that we talked about a couple weeks ago that people are just going to see right through. You shouldn't have to flaunt these other things, these external wealth, external riches, this materialistic ideology that you're trying to put out onto everybody. Like, that's not being like a samurai. That's not balancing your life, because you're sooner or later it's all going to crumble, and then what are you going to be left with? Nobody's going to stick around to be with you. So that's why it's important to be honest. And I don't know why they really picked that example to talk about honesty and sincerity. But it's a good point to go off of when you think about it like that, and the riches and trying to flaunt what you got, but you really don't have it.
I have an idea for that, why they would pick using money as the example when it comes to honesty and sincerity. And I think that would have to tie to expecting things in return. Because if you're going to go out and you're going to help people, you're going to be nice, courteous, things like that, you should not be expecting anything. So like, you're not going to go off and go do a good deed sincerely if you're expecting to get something in return from that. Like, oh, no, I'm just helping you. It's okay. And it might not even be monetarily where like you're waiting for like a tip or something, but where it's like, it's okay. But
remember,
yeah, in a month from now, I'm going to come to you for something.
Yeah.
And you're going to owe me.
Well, that's a good point too, because in that time, like, let's say everything was the provinces, right? So you have like your rice farmers and your cattle farmers and all that. And if you're going out of your way to be that samurai and you're protecting them from outside threats, you can't just turn around and be like, okay, now you have to feed my family.
Yeah.
Or you have to give me half of your rice farm, or like, you can't expect that thing. So that's a good point that you mentioned, that sincerity aspect. Now, the sixth point, honor. This is a big one. And when you think of samurai, when you think of that Japanese tradition, you first initially should think of honor, because that's something that they've been known for a long time. And clearly the average person doesn't live by such principles, but let's try to implement that. However, honor is critical to realizing your best self. Honor is a representation of who you are as a person. It's your word, your actions, and your very worth reflected within others.
I mean, that's pretty simple, It goes along. It's tying everything together now, I think. Going back towards the other 5 points and bringing everything in. So,
well, yeah,
like I said, it's definitely structured intentionally this way.
Yeah, there's a reason behind everything.
Yeah.
But yeah, when you have the honor of making sure you have a good reputation with other people, like I said, you can't just solely live your life based on fear. You can't have other people just scared of you all the time, running away, thinking, yeah, you are this big, powerful brute of a guy or a woman, but nobody wants to be around you. You need to have some sort of honor, which is rooted in justice and the righteous intent, that you have all this courage and mercy at the same time, that you do have structure. That's like, honor just balances everything out into an ultimate structured lifestyle. And then now the next point goes on to what you do for others, and that's loyalty. So at the time, like I said, provinces, so you protected the wealthier people or different provinces in the land as a samurai. And loyalty is that true men remain loyal to those whom they are indebted. Loyalty to a superior was the most distinctive virtue of the feudal era, because if you turn your back on your leader, if you turn your back on, your king, your ruler, whatever the case may be, you could have to perform the seppuku. Mm-hmm. That's the ultimate form of stabbing somebody in the back, which then ends up with you stabbing yourself in the stomach.
Yeah. I mean, that definitely applies today with loyalty. We lack loyalty big time.
It's very easy to turn your back on other people. And, foreshadowing, next week's topic is going to be heavy on loyalty.
Yeah.
But, I mean, we do lack that now, especially since we don't have these codes or some form of this code in our culture today in, the Western world, in America. It's hard to find people that are truly loyal to you, but maybe it's because you don't have those other traits already active in your life. If you start having all those, you'll find the people that are loyal to you once you become loyal to them, once you start offering all these good things that you're able to provide for them, not just be their bodyguard, because how easy is it to just find another one?
Today, very easy.
Yeah.
Which is what I was going to kind of say about that, is like, now everything's so superficial and you have so many options that you take those options for granted, and you don't need that loyalty towards your employer, towards really anybody.
Yeah.
Because there's always other options for you.
Yeah.
And people don't realize the value of being loyal to that singular entity, whatever it may be, you know?
Like, that's a great example with the employer. Like, I know somebody who's been with a job for, or been with a company for 15 years, just working. And it's so easy for them to go, oh, quarantine's happening, a pandemic's hitting, we got to let you go. It's so easy when he's given 15 years of his life plus to this singular company. Then now it's very hard to find people or bigger corporations that can be loyal to an individual. So that's something that you really have to hold on to.
That's why you work for small businesses, or you own a small business.
You support small businesses. But now wrapping everything together, character and self-control is the last code of the Bushido. And it teaches that men should behave according to an absolute moral standard, one that transcends logic, not the rapper. What's right is right, and what's wrong is wrong. The difference between good and bad and between right and wrong are givens, not arguments subject to discussion or justification. And a man should know the difference. Finally, it's a man's obligation to teach his children moral standards. As a parent, I'm sure you're going to be doing that through the model of his own behavior. Like I mentioned before, lead by example. The first objective of samurai education was to build up the character. Because if you don't have that strong base on wanting to have all these things first, you're not going to make your way through the 8 codes of conduct. So you have to first learn how to build that character to want to do things righteously. You have to build up the character to be courageous and have mercy and benevolence. You're going to want to be honest to actually become honest and sincere.
Yeah, I mean, character building is a big thing. And I mean,
it's pretty easy when you're in a video game, but in real life, it's pretty tough.
Yeah.
That's for sure.
I mean, we see it all the time in our field with self-development and self-growth. It's always the topic of discussion, always. And it's such a fundamental thing that your character is what matters most. And again, because we see everything so superficially, we have so many options. And then when we look at ourselves, we think we can mimic that outside world. But with ourselves, you only have you. There is no other option. And that character building is going to be very important. But unfortunately, we don't see it that way. Or it's really hard to see it that way because of what's reflected on the outside world.
Exactly. And that's why character building and that self-control is a big thing. It's probably the most fundamental thing to actually start working on, because it's going to be your entire life. You're going to continue to build up your character. And then now that's all the 8 codes that were under the Bushido. But there's also other practices that the samurai would use to keep that work and play at balance. But they would use things as Zen Buddhism, which taught the samurai that everything in the universe is impermanent and is bound to destroy. Everybody dies, but the one who dies for the right cause dies peacefully. Everybody's going to live, but the one who lives for the right cause lives peacefully. So, I mean, that's pretty much what Buddhism is. But when you start thinking that way and you're like, okay, everything's going to go away. So one, you don't have to think about money like if it's the first priority you have on your list.
It's not going to save your life.
Yeah, you don't have to flaunt it around. You don't have to, live off that fear, because you're eventually going to die. They're eventually going to die. Then what's going to be left of you? That you were just the scary man? Is that what you want? Yeah. So when you start thinking of things like that, like they were living through war, like death was in their job description. So they're expecting to die, but what better way than to acknowledge it ahead of time and then be at peace with it. Know that what they're doing is for the right causes. And then they'll be able to live a more stress-free life. And then with that, Zen meditation, which is what we've talked about before, but especially when you're going into wars and, it's not like you're shooting them from a mile away with a sniper.
Yeah, you're up
close, dude. You have a sword. You're this far away from me.
Yeah.
So an empty mind is the free mind. And for a swordsman, in the midst of combat, and an empty mind frees him from doubt and fear and the need for calculation of concentration on technique. So if he's been meditating, on his off times, he's been able to calm himself down when he's up to the challenge right there. There's somebody that wants to kill him in front of him. He doesn't have to worry about, am I holding the sword right? Am I holding, am I calculating everything correctly? Like, he's at peace. Empty mind. He has no worries. He's able to, let's say,
perform his job,
perform his duties. Yeah. And that can go a long way for you for meditation. You don't have to stress about if you're doing your homework, if you're doing your job correctly, if you've been able to calm your mind, put it at ease. You can perform your job a lot easier.
And see, like I was saying last time about meditation, and that's why I love that, because you already have people who have this amazing foundation, this amazing code of conduct that covers everything across the board. And when you live like that, and you're true to that type of thing, when you go to meditate, it's going to do you wonders. It's going to be perfect for you. It's going to be that confidence builder. But when you already have that fear and you already have that stress and anxiety in your life, and you go to meditate on its own, it's going to amplify it. It's just going to amplify the qualities you already have. And when you start living and practicing these types of qualities, when you go to meditate, you will find that peace. You will amplify those qualities that you've been working on. And it's going to help you grow tremendously.
Yeah, and then the next point is going to sound a little, drastic to that warrior mentality that you have for yourself, if you do think of yourself as that, or if you are somebody that suffers with that stress and anxiety, it could help you out as well. This next one, I mean, some people might not even believe it, but samurais would actually practice with poetry. The haiku was created for them. They would oftentimes sit on the edge of their house or on a rock somewhere and just look at the sky, look at the trees, look at the river, and write a haiku about it. Now, I don't have any, and I should have prepared some to read, but what I can do is offer up on the YouTube video. I can post up a picture right now of different examples of like actual poems that samurais have written in the past. And it's something that everybody can benefit from. It's something that you're practicing, having peaceful thoughts in your head. You're able to keep that positive mentality at the same time as being this fierce warrior, or to grow yourself into this warrior-like mentality.
And see, that's what I love about haikus, because they are so simple and straightforward. And that's all it takes. All it takes to shift your mind to doing something else, you know?
And it's not like it's a long form poem like some of the poetry authors we know, but it's like 4 sentences or 5 sentences, something like that. And I mean, words can go a long way, especially when it's something that you're creating from just looking at nature. Now, the last one is, I kind of touched on it before, but it's that negative visualization. Like I said, death is in their job description, so they know they're going to die. They know that that what they're doing is oftentimes killing other people. So they would train relentlessly and imagine the worst possible outcome so they could be prepared for what lies ahead, and they can stay calm throughout it. So it's visualizing what's going to be the worst possible thing that's ever going to happen, which would be death. But in your case, it might be something different. What's the worst thing that can happen? Think about that. Whatever example you have, if it's job, if it's work, if it's life, and then prepare yourself for the worst. And then who knows, you're going to be more prepared for the little struggles that come in between. You're not going to be caught off guard sitting in your comfort zone. You're going to be expecting or prepared for, your wife leaving, your husband leaving you, or any little thing. And then when there's a little problem that comes up, or losing your job, when there's a little problem that comes up, you're going to be ready for it. You're going to be able to go through it calmly, and it's going to, put you at peace. You're going to be at rest with all of it.
Yeah, because the worst possible outcome is the least likely thing to happen. So when you have all these solutions already covered for those things, it does give you that sense of confidence, that sense of peace, that sense of comfort, even though it's such a small probability that you're going to get that worst outcome. You're going to be able to come through it with a much more calm state of mind, be able to rationalize things better and get through it, because if the worst thing ever did happen, oh well, you're ready. You're
ready to fight it head on. And that about summarizes everything that I wanted to talk about today. being able to balance that inner peace and the war that you have struggling within you. Like I said, if you're somebody that thinks of yourself as this warrior, you want to be strong for your family, you want to be strong for yourself, you don't always have to destroy the path ahead. You can always find different things to, like I said, this code of conduct, the Bushido, do more research on it if you're interested in it. If you want to live your life the way that these samurais did, like I said, arguably the most deadliest warriors throughout history. Everybody knows who a samurai is. So why not try to uphold their code of conduct within your life now? You can have such great results with just regular people having the honor that you can hold for yourself. Other people have such a higher respect for you when you have these righteous intentions, when you try to lead by example, when you're courageous and you have that mercy and that benevolence in you. People are going to respect that a lot, and they're going to start gravitating to you, and you're going to find a lot more loyal people within your life.
I love it, man. I got nothing more to say to that. That's perfect. What I do have to say is if you guys would leave a rating, leave a comment, like, subscribe, share, do all those wonderful things so that way we can get these words of wisdom out and help more people. We would truly appreciate that. We really do love hearing from you guys. Any comments at all, you can always leave them in the comment section. You can always go over to our Facebook or our Instagram. Those links are down below. Leave us DMs, comments there. We love talking with you guys, and I'd love to hear from you.
Now again, all of our videos come out Mondays and Wednesdays at 8 a.m. EST, so remember, hit that bell icon as you're subscribing and sharing these videos to your friends and family. And until Monday, go on and get.